Hello, hello everyone. This is Jessica with Time, Order, Purpose, Organizing. I want to thank everyone for taking some time to be with me today. And I'll give a couple minutes to see if we get anybody on. I know that we had a few people that wanted to be here today. And I look forward to having some guests with me. So we'll just hang out for a little bit. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, jessica@toporganizing.com, or you can text me at 203-915-0474. And that is during, after, whenever you need to get a hold of me, feel free to let me know how I could be of service to you. So we're just going to hang out here for another minute or two and see if anybody can jump on with us. I'm going to head over to the Facebook event group really quick and make sure I repost the link. That way everybody knows exactly where it is that they're going. Is everybody doing okay today? Whenever you are reading this, I hope everybody's in a good place, has some awesome things going on in their mind. So let's see here. Okay, well, I guess we will just go ahead and get started, and if anybody jumps on in the process, we'll welcome them with open arms. My name is Jessica. I am the owner and creator of Time, Order, Purpose, Organizing. I love to focus on helping people learn how to be organized. And within that, there's so many things. And one of the biggest things that I talk about is relational. We all have a lot of different relationships that we need to navigate in our process of maintaining organization. And so today, that's a little bit of what we're going to go into is the foundations to eliminating nagging. We're going to be making some big changes hopefully today. And those big changes are going to come in just small little things that we can do on an everyday. I was listening to a webinar yesterday, and it was really about creating that daily habit. And we all hear, it takes 21 days to make a habit. But I really encourage you to think longer term than that. At 30 days, we're probably doing okay. At 60 days, we're in a much better place as far as being able to maintain and sustain that habit, and at 90 days, I think that's when it's really starting to be ingrained. So just a little bit about me and who I am and why top organizing and all of that good stuff. I grew up in a kind of hectic family. There were, in total, are 5 kids. My sisters and I are 18 months apart on either side. I'm the middle girl. And then we have 2 younger brothers, one by my mom and one by my dad. My parents divorced when I was about 2 or 3. And my whole life, both of my parents worked multiple jobs, always out of the house, always constantly doing things. And thankfully, we had amazing grandparents and great grandparents to help raise us. But as a kid, I always saw that. I saw how much they worked. I saw how much they were doing. I saw how much fighting was happening, not just between my parents over us kids, but just in general in our household. We were very angry and we fought a lot, and there was so much miscommunication and a lot of nagging to get things done. And those are all reasons why I do what I do, because I think I know organization can really make huge changes in people's lives, in their family, in their work, and it opens up doors to be able to put our time, attention, energy, focus on things that mean a lot more to us than, worrying about the small little things like, did somebody put their dish in the sink, or, it's the 5th time I asked you to clean up your room, and things along those lines. That's how time, order, purpose organizing came into play, because I wanted to change the world so the situation I grew up in was less and less likely to happen, especially with divorce rates being at 50%. It's very likely people are dealing with a lot of the chaos that I grew up in. And if I can change that, even for 1% of the world, that really, really is my goal in life. Now, I always ask this question: what do you hope to get out of this workshop? Because I think it's very important to have an idea of what you're looking for. And today being the Foundations to Eliminate Nagging, I assume you're probably looking for some help on how to either stop nagging, stop being nagged, something along those lines. But I would like you to think and really dig a little bit deeper into, what am I hoping to get out of this? I ask that you do that so that at the end, if you didn't accomplish that, if you didn't learn what you needed to learn, please, please, please reach out to me, because I want to help you get the answers that you're looking for. And if for some reason I don't have the response that you're looking for, I can help find that for you, whether it be in another person, whether I have to do some research, whatever the case may be. I can help figure out the problem that you're facing and start helping you make some changes. Highly encourage you, write down what you are hoping to get out of this workshop, and let's move forward. When I talked about eliminating nagging, there's 3 main things that I find integral to making that happen, to ceasing the nagging, to minimizing it, to creating a different way that we do things. Those 3 things revolve around communication, setting standards and expectations, and responsibility and accountability. Surprisingly, or not surprisingly, however you want to take it, these are also some very basic steps to organizing your home as well. And I have a whole nother program and class and all of that stuff that goes into more of an overarching, how do we get organized in the home? But the basics are all pretty much the same. When you sit back and think about how you communicate at home, whether with your significant other, with your children, with your parents, what do you think your communication style looks like? Is there more nonverbal than verbal? Is there a lot of yelling? Is there not a lot of communication at all? Is there a lot of miscommunication? Are there expectations that are not verbalized or not explained that cause the communication to break down? Give this a thought for a few minutes and really consider, what does that look like in your home on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis? Communication is the first thing I talk about in just about all of my programs because it's so very important. And when we look at communication, we have to keep a few things in mind. One is that there are so many different styles of communication, and they vary pretty much person to person. Granted, there's going to be some people that have very similar traits and ways that they communicate, but overall, we each kind of speak our own language as far as communication goes. And then one of the greatest things about communication that I love to talk about is really just the fact that it does open so many doors, both in the immediate nature as well as very long term. If you think about it, everything you ever had is because, or got, or have, I think, everything you've ever had. My brain is a little fried today. I sat in a car for 3 hours in the cold. Came through some sort of communication, written, verbal, nonverbal, some sort of agreement, which had to have happened through some communication. And finally, one of the things that I find very, very important to talk about digs into feelings. And we'll get more into that later, but that one's very, very important to me personally. When we talk about styles, this is what we're looking at. We all have heard, all sorts of different things about how we talk. Or our learning styles, how we communicate, how we take in information versus how we put it out. And there's so many different ways to categorize oneself in this realm. We have everything from left versus right brain. We have the measurements, which are dominant, influential, conscientiousness, and steadiness. And we all have all of these things that we can go through. And are you an introvert or an extrovert? Are you logical or emotional? Are you people oriented or task oriented? Are you direct or indirect? You have the Myers-Briggs, which gives you another bunch of letters that you can relate or not relate to. One of my favorites is the love languages. If you haven't read this book, or if you haven't gone to the number 5, lovelanguages.com, go check that out right now, because it is amazing to see how people think differently, how people interact differently. There's things, and I guess the thing that I take most away from the 5 love languages is that we always speak in our language. And as a business person, someone brought this to my attention in the form of speaking clientese, which means we have to break down our talk into language that our clients can understand. And the same happens within our homes. We need to speak in a language that our children, that our spouses, that our parents, that the random person staying in our house, usually it's not random, but or an uncle, a best friend who's having a hard time, in order to best communicate with them, we need to speak in their language. And we need to build up positive communication before we can start giving feedback and criticism and things along those lines. Then you have your auditory, visual, and kinesthetic learners. And these I am always amazed with, because I feel like I'm a little bit of all three, and there's definitely some people that are. But you also have your person that is super auditory. They do not get anything unless it is spoken or they speak it, and they really need to hear everything. You have your visual people who, if they don't see it, they're truly not understanding it. And my favorite are the kinesthetics, because they need to be in stuff. They truly need to have their hands on stuff to understand how it works, and more importantly, why it works. You also have your passive aggressive, your assertive people, and we all have different connotations around all of those things, right? We tend to balk at the passive aggressive person who tries to assert themselves in a way that doesn't bring on any sort of confrontation or actual focus to them, which is silly to some of us who just handle things so head on and are very aggressive about things, or even to the person that would rather just completely leave it be. And these are all things that we need to consider when we're looking at our family, and when we realize just how ineffective we're communicating with them. Because we may be that very dominant, logical, task-oriented person, but if our child is super emotional and very people-oriented, and we're not addressing that, or we're not really using that to our advantage to explain why we're doing things or why we need things done, we're missing out on a huge opportunity for ourselves and for our kids and our families and our husbands and whoever else is we're having these issues with. Now, when we talk about open doors, this one's great because I don't think we actually consider how communication can really work to our advantage. And I can tell you from personal experience how amazing becoming a more effective and efficient communicator has helped in so many areas of my life, from business to personal relationships to being in different clubs and all sorts of things. And I can tell you that before I started working on my communication tools, my relationships were a lot more difficult than they are now. Not to say that I'm at 100% with that either, but I just know that they were so much more trying because I didn't have that ability to share my feelings, which is something we'll get into next, or ask for what I need or wanted, or explain what was going on with me so that someone else could understand and empathize or help out, or whatever the case may be. And this is, in part, learning about organization did create, or not organization, but communication did create amazing change in my life. It encourages change in all sorts of realms when we can actually have open communication and share ideas and knowledge and wisdom and not be afraid to share those things. One of the greatest things about having open communication is that it creates this place of safety where so much more can be created in that space, because we don't have to worry about feeling silly or whatnot. And when we can let down our guard a little bit, it creates more understanding for each other. And, being able to express a why we want things done, or why things are the way they are, creates so much more engagement. And that's really where the nagging starts to dissipate. When we get to have the buy-in, when we start really explaining in a way, in a manner that the other person understands. Instead of, do the dishes, well, I'll do it when I'm ready, explaining how the dishes, if you leave them in the sink, the food's going to get harder, and we're going to get bugs, and bugs bring mice, but I don't know if that's actually true or not, but I'm sure there's something along the lines of that. But one of my favorite things is to do the give a mouse a cookie, or give a mouse a cookie, or give a mouse a muffin explanation. So really taking it and just over exaggerating it like crazy, so that the point of why can really be listened to and not just heard and understood, and therefore action can be taken. And not just any action, but the right action, the action that's going to get something done, and done in the right way. And communication is the door that opens up to all of these things: the understanding, the better relationships, getting input, getting action. All of these things are created when we start communicating more efficiently and effectively. Feelings for me is definitely one of the most important parts. I feel like most of us nag or get nagged because of some sort of feeling. The nagger is always feeling unloved or unappreciated and just wanting help. They're feeling almost helpless and stressed and overwhelmed. And so when the person they're asking for help doesn't do it, or doesn't do it the way they asked, half the time the result is anger or disappointment or deeper frustration at the situation that we're in, because now that person's made more work, or they're making me have to feel bad about myself because I'm constantly having to nag. And the person getting nagged is frustrated, and they feel like they're being yelled at instead of giving choices, and they've lost control, or whatever the case may be. This is really why I say focus on communicating about feelings. As a kid, we didn't really talk much about feelings at all. And for me, that's caused a lot of havoc. In my business, what I do is so feelings-based, and I have to constantly work at being able to be open with my feelings, with my clients, with myself, with people that I do business with on a regular basis, so that they can feel connected, and so that they can feel like it's a safe place to also share their feelings, because that's a big part of what we do in organization, is dealing with feelings, dealing with that mental and emotional clutter that happens right alongside the physical. When we deal in those feelings, we can have better relationships, both now and later. Having not talked about feelings very much, it's definitely, again, made my relationships, business and personal, that much more difficult as an adult. And the biggest thing that I can say is when we talk about feelings, we need to stop blaming. We need to take responsibility, and this is something we'll talk about a little bit later as well, and try to use the statement, when you did this, I felt. And this takes away some of the blaming and the fact that it's not you made me feel or you did this without taking any of the responsibility. So if we can take some of the responsibility when we're sharing our feelings, this creates the open dialogue and it helps people understand what they're doing that is causing this reaction, which is super integral, especially in the nagging instances of, when you don't listen to me, I feel hurt and frustrated and like you don't love me, or something along those lines. And this type of communication can really help the person being nagged understand what place they're putting in the person that is doing the nagging, if that makes sense. This next part, we're going to go into standards and expectations. And I'd love to ask this question of, do you have any standards set in your home? Because most people immediately are like, oh, absolutely, yes. And then I ask, well, how do you know it's a standard? Or how would somebody that comes into your home know that this is a standard in your home? And the answer is usually, well, you just know. Or because everyone does it this way. And while that can be very powerful, I highly encourage a little bit more structure around it. And we talk about standards and expectations, mostly in part because the English language is very relative. When you think about most words, there's multiple definitions, multiple ways of looking at it. The verb tense has a slightly different meaning than the noun tense, which has a different meaning than the adjective sense of the word. And how do you know which word means what and when to use it? And the English language can be very confusing. And when we talk to a kid and we say, go clean your room, or we need to organize the garage, or anything along those lines, goodness, how can you expect them to know what you mean if you don't spell it out for them? Because your definition of clean is probably a lot different than their definition of clean. And have you ever actually sat down and set that standard or expectation? Some of the places that I highly encourage you to consider setting standards, and by that I mean an actual definition of what these are, what is to be expected, when they're supposed to be done, all of that good stuff, kind of lay out the details. I really encourage you to set it around what's clean versus what's organized, or both. What are the chores that they're responsible for? What does a completed chore look like? How about homework? What are the standards for homework? Is homework to be done at the kitchen table prior to being able to go outside? Is that an everyday thing? Do they get to do sports if they don't do their homework? Manners is huge for me. Having taught gymnastics for 6 years, I am so strict about manners with adults and children alike. Don't order me around. Use your please and thank yous. Use your manners, because that's what's expected of people in this world. You don't just get to be entitled and have everything handed to you. You need to respect the people that you're around. And even if that's a simple please, thank you, you're welcome, all of these things are highly important to creating a more positive world. think about it if somebody said thank you to you more often. You did the dishes for the 19th time this week. And without having to mention it, your kid said, thanks, Mom, that's great. Or Dad shovels the sidewalks in the garage for 3 hours on Saturday. And instead of the kids running outside and playing, they're like, thanks, Dad, that was awesome of you to do. Or a please, can you please help me with this? And a please at the beginning of the sentence instead of as an afterthought. Can you do this, please? It really changes the tone and how we do things. So what are your standards around those? Have you had these conversations with your kids? And more importantly, is it communicated somewhere? Whether you have the auditory or the visual people or the kinesthetics, how do you relate that to them? And the great thing about setting a standard is that when the standard is set around these things, we also have rewards and consequences built right into those standards. So this is a big place where some of that nagging just gets to go away. Go clean your room. Well, I don't want to. Okay, well, if you don't clean your room, these are the terms that we've already agreed to. So make your choice. And instead of a repeated, can you please go do this, or go do this now, then it becomes a choice that the person gets to make. Okay, I've asked you to do this. If you don't do it, you know what this is, you know what the consequence of not doing it is, and you get to make that choice. I've read this great, or watched this great webinar. I watch a lot of webinars, and this woman is teaching some parent behavior stuff, and one of the things that she talks about is, okay, if our children don't want to brush their teeth, we shouldn't have to ask them 10 times to brush their teeth. So they know that before bedtime they have to brush their teeth. If they choose to not brush their teeth before bed, then for the next 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, whatever, until they remember to regularly brush their teeth again, they get all sweets taken away. And one of the greatest things I love about that I enjoyed was that she really talks about creating a punishment that goes hand in hand with the action. So, if they don't brush their teeth, don't take away their Game Boy. Are those things still popular? DS, whatever it's called. Maybe you want to keep it in relation. So we take away all sweets and anything that can leave sugar on their teeth, because that's relatable to what they didn't do. And that brings us into our expectations. And I really love to be sure that we're not super demanding or rigid as far as our expectations. Life happens, and having some flexibility in there is going to be helpful for you as much as it is for anybody else that you're dealing with. With that, I always love to implement a range. That being said, it's kind of this has been one heck of a week. Things have not been going our way all week. Car problems, or a loved one being sick, or snowstorm after snowstorm kept everybody inside and going crazy. Kind of have that minimal worst case scenario. This is where things need to be when we go to bed. Then you're going to have your regular turn of the mill. This is what it should look like 90% of the time. And your best case scenarios. Grandma's coming to the house for the first time, or having a party, anything where you would normally spruce up. It's having those expectations already set in place, and also the expectation that everyone has a role in that. So it's not just mom, dad, big sister, auntie taking care of everything. Every single person has a role and responsibility, which we'll get into here in a little bit. And again, the standard, the definition, the expectation, the reward, the consequence, all of those need to be communicated. And I know this can be, I mean, I'm not saying have paper upon paper upon paper about all of your standards and all of your expectations and all of those things. But it may be good to, write out a sentence or take pictures of each acceptability level. Okay, if things get worse than this picture, everybody needs to take a timeout and help at least get it to our minimal acceptable level. If things are at this picture and we can keep them there for a week, let's throw a party. Or whatever the case may be. Make sure there's both rewards and consequences, because consequences bring out the fear. None of us like to be punished. None of us like to have fear. But we all do love rewards. We love to have those little presents that make us feel good and encourage us to do more and to do better. So I highly encourage you to find the rewards for, if we keep the regularly expected level of cleanliness or organization. We can have we can have pizza and a movie on Friday night. Or, if the best case scenario lasts through the weekend, maybe, we can get a new school outfit or something along those lines. Which brings me to the next part of, do you know who is responsible for what in your home? Again, may sound like a silly question, but who you think you have in charge of something may not actually be in charge of it. And these are all good things to know. Who's in charge of taking out the trash or bringing in the cans after the trash people come? Who's in charge of dishes, of sweeping the floor, of doing the laundry, changing sheets, all of those things? Who's in charge of going through the mail? Who's in charge of paying the bills? Who is responsible for what in your home? I highly encourage you at some point to write this all out and find out where you lay. Is the responsibility kind of evenly spread out? Is it all on one person? If it's all on one person, that's going to increasingly make the nagging worse, because we're overwhelmed, we have too much stuff to do, and we need help. But if we've taken on all of those things and we're used to doing them, and when we start asking for help, most of the time we get pushback because they haven't had to help out, so why should they now? And that's a big place where the whys can come in of, explaining, work is getting really tough, I'm working a lot more hours, therefore I can't necessarily do all of the laundry by myself. I can't prepare a fresh meal every day, so I need help in these things. And, if you want to take it a step further, if I'm not home to prepare a meal, then you guys are eating bad food, and you have tests and sports and extracurricular activities that you need your brain and body power for. But if you're eating, mac and cheese every night or stopping for fast food every night, your power is going to be minimized. Your energy, your attention, all of these things are going to be minimized. So if someone could help me by, preparing the vegetables or thawing meat or whatever it is that would be helpful to you, We have to be able to ask these things. We have to be able to give somebody the responsibility. So for someone like me who's super A-type, I like to be in control of everything. We need to be able to relinquish some of that control to people and entrust them to do it right. But we entrust them to do it right because we've set standards and expectations around how we want things done. We don't just let things go all willy-nilly. If we have standards and expectations in place, then it's that much easier to relinquish that responsibility to someone else. When we hear responsibility and accountability, we always kind of assume, well, aren't they really go hand in hand, correct? And this is very true. One of the best ways I've heard them described is responsibility. Whoever is responsible, they are the owner of the specific task. And whoever is accountable is the owner of the outcome. And therefore, if Sally is accountable for the kitchen getting cleaned and Johnny was doing the dishes, Sally could potentially get in trouble if the dishes are not cleaned correctly because she is in charge of the overall outcome of the kitchen being cleaned, whereas Johnny was just responsible for getting the dishes clean, whatever that meant. And I like to try and bring these up to more of a closer level, if you will, with those standards and expectations. So regardless, if you are just in charge of the task, you now have to step up and take accountability for the outcome of that task. So when we put them together, it creates much more of a team building atmosphere where, you can't just say, I did it and it's done, so leave me alone. If I did it and it's done, but it's not correct, then it is now my responsibility to go back and do it again, or fix it, or figure out how to do it differently, or whatever the case may be. And it's really about creating those two things, a responsibility and accountability, hand in hand. Through this, we're able to really embrace those rewards and consequences. Do you have any consequences or rewards that are put in place for jobs well done or not well done at this point in your home? Are they clear? Are they defined? Or do they change each time? If someone is in charge of doing the dishes and they refuse to do the dishes, do they have the same consequence for making that choice each time? Is it consistent? One of the biggest things we fail at is consistency. And I say we because I'm totally included in this, is especially for children, consistency is key. It's what builds that safe environment. And so if we regularly are changing the reward or changing the consequence, they don't know what to expect. It's not consistent, and therefore they're going to keep testing the waters. They're going to keep allowing you to nag them to do something because they don't feel like they have a choice, because they're not clear on what their choices are. If I don't do the dishes, what's going to happen to me today? Will I have to go to my room? Will I not be able to have dessert? Well, what are the consequences that are in place? And so that's really one of the biggest things about nagging, is that we need to be able to communicate on a basic level, right? We need to be able to express what we need, what we want, what we're feeling. We need to be able to explain the whys of those things. Why do we want this? Why do we feel this way? Why is this happening? When we can explain why, it creates more buy-in, it creates an option for input, it creates a place for more thoughts and ideas to be generated for how to fix or better the situation. And when we have those standards and expectations in place, then we're able to take that communication to the next step. So we use communication to establish those standards and expectations, and that's something I highly encourage is done as a family, not just one person being like, bam, here's the hammer, this is what is the standard in the house, and this is what is expected. I have a program that I run that we're making some slight changes to, but it is a live webinar program that teaches you how to create that family standard and expectation, what to do in order to really make that happen in your household. And that's called the foundation or fundamentals of getting organized. We put the fun in fundamentals. And that starts in January, so I'd love to talk to you about that if anybody is interested. That program is a $500 value. I'm doing it for $350. And it is so powerful. I've had people, you can go to my website at toporganizing.com and check out the testimonials. Candy K, her daughter and her went through the program, the first rendition of the program, and it was right in the summertime and right before school started, and they stopped the nagging. They were able to completely redo her room. They were unable to get into her closet, and she wasn't able to see any of her clothes. So there was constantly fighting, and I don't know where my shoes are, and all of that stuff. And that all was able to stop for them to have an amazing start to their school year. And just a few weeks ago, we talked, and she said one of the greatest accomplishments this year was that her and her daughter are communicating on such a different level right now. They're more understanding of each other, and they get to see each other in a different light. And a lot of that came from the communication. It came from setting up the standards and expectations. It came from having a plan. And it came from having rewards and consequences. It came from having that responsibility and accountability to the point that they had set a goal, for, I think it was 6 weeks, they were going to do a different project in the room each week, and they had a consequence and a reward. So if they didn't meet their goal to do whatever task it was in the room that week, they had a consequence. And if they did reach their goal, they had mini rewards throughout the process, and as long as everything was done by the daughter's birthday, she got a brand new bed. And it's just so amazing to see the power of, there was none of my hands-on organizational help that went into it, but the before and after pictures are up again, toporganizing.com, and you can see it's a total transformation. So not only was their physical transformed, but their mental and emotional was transformed as well. And that's the biggest thing that I really focus on, is not just focusing on let's clean up this stuff and let's help you get rid of stuff and all of that good stuff. It's really about making changes, making adjustments, and doing it in small doses so that they can stick, so that 90 days down the road, you're seeing ultimate change that can incrementally add on to itself. I hope you all enjoy this video so much and that you take something out of it. Remember that if you start communicating, talking about feelings, really dig deep into what do you want, what do you need, and why. Set standards and expectations around the things in your home that you're having those nagging fights about. Is it about homework? Is it about getting clean? What is it about? Is it about curfews? What are you constantly nagging somebody or being nagged about? And work together to set up a standard and expectation around that. And lastly, make sure you have some way to be responsible and accountable for things. Set up rewards, set up consequences, put those into place and stick with them. Because if you stick with them, I guarantee you will see some changes. You may not be able to completely eliminate nagging just with these couple things, but I can guarantee you that you will absolutely see a difference if you put these into place. My name is Jessica. We are Time, Order, Purpose Organizing. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Please feel free to share it out with friends, family, whoever you know that can really take advantage of this information. If you have feedback, please give it to me. I am constantly looking to learn and grow and be better. And I can only do that if I know how to help you better. So, less talking, more pictures. Do you want videos? What is it that's going to help you learn better and be able to put these things into place? Always feel free to reach out to me, jessica@toporganizing.com, or my phone number is 203-915-0474. You can call me, you can text me, leave me a voicemail, whatever. I want to be open and available to you to help you any way I can. I love to give tips and tricks. I will absolutely do a free 30-minute consult with you. Just be open to the positive changes that you can make in your life, and they will absolutely happen. Thank you for listening. Thank you for signing in, and have a wonderful, wonderful evening.